believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America's promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We're going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit of unity to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. We will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, and independent nation. We will stand bravely. We will live proudly. We will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, I hope you all saw the full 30 minutes of President Donald J. Trump's inauguration speech. It was riveting. It was moving. He covered all the points. And then it was an interesting crowd. Now, I had put together a cold open to kind of contrast like Trump and Biden. But you know what? I didn't want to ruin today with some of that rhetoric. So what I wanted you to take away from that is the spirit of America is exactly that. It's the explorers, the brave, the bold men and women who got us where we are today, okay, from way back when till the present time. Even in the face of Hurricane Helene, we saw great Americans come out helping each other when the Biden administration failed to help them. We saw in the LA fires, and we're going to have a guest on today who's still over there in the Palisades. We saw people come together and help each other. We have reports, allegedly, because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, of police officers coming off duty to deliver resupply to some folks because they were not allowed to do it while they were in uniform for whatever reason. Okay, but the biggest thing that I took away from today and the last since the election is we saw America come together and they've had enough. They've had enough of champagne socialists. socialist policies, divisive policies like DEI, okay? And they had enough of it because I think, and it happened in layers, people started waking up layer by layer by layer. And thank God they woke up before it was too late. Now, it's not over. We're just getting started. It's going to be a tumultuous 4 years. But when I look at that speech, all I could think of was, my dad and, getting up 364 days a year to bake donuts in our donut shop to feed all 9 of us, okay, in Maine. And I think of us waking up in the morning so we literally would have to fill up buckets of water from the part of the frozen lake that wasn't frozen because the plumbing didn't always work. We were a bit poor growing up, and I'm not even embellishing. But it's not about me. It's about everyone that does that. And you don't have to go through, everyone's hardships are relative. It could be that you're that kid in NYU studying your ass off to pass a test because you want to get this degree and do something, live out your dream to help people or whatever it is. Those are hardships. But the difference between people like the commander-in-chief, the new commander-in-chief, the returned commander-in-chief, people like my guest today and her husband and the people we surround ourselves with, my wife, my daughter, my kids, and all of you probably that are on this podcast, is we don't just talk about it, we do it. We make things happen. If we've got a problem, we attack it. Okay, we get rid of it. We had a problem in this country, and it looks like we have gotten rid of it. Now there's still some digging. It's like a tick, right? There's still some little pieces of it in the wound, and we're going to have to get rid of those. And then we're going to have to do it again over and over every 2 years to make sure we don't get more infestations of our government. But it was inspiring today because to me, it looked like America. It looked like majesty. It looked like the greatest country on earth, and it is. And now we see that again. You saw some protests outside the White House all weekend. There was the People's March. I've dove into that on Friday. I'm going to put out that video this week. These are like the actual revolutionary communists of the USA who kind of organize that. And yes, that's their name, the RevComs, the revolutionary communists of the USA, who openly advocate overthrowing our system of government. Those aren't Americans. They might have been born here. They might have a passport, but anyone that wants to destroy this nation, when you've barely given it a chance, they're not Americans and they don't believe in the American dream. And, those are not the people that should be running our government. And we have gone through a long time of those very types of mentality running the government, as well as corruption and greed. And don't be fooled by people like Bernie Sanders for a second. The guy is rich. Okay. People like that are rich. They're making money. Okay. Donald Trump's rich too, but you know what? He's not trying to project himself as anything more but a guy who made money and is living out the American dream and believes in America. So we won't get into his head. I'm not there. I don't know Donald Trump. I've met him once. But what I will say is this: for all of you on the left, give it a chance. You will probably get what you want because he'll probably, and people around, your fellow Americans, they can kind of help you decide what you want, because I think a lot of you don't actually know what you want. I think you like to yell, and I think you give in to emotions, but you don't really know. And that's very evident when you talk to people about, ask them the question, what is a woman? Or why are you marching? I mean, go to DC any day of the week and it's bring your own sign day. Okay. So, and I'm not mocking, I'm just saying, everyone in America should get what they want as long as it doesn't take away from other Americans. Okay. And look, people on the right, check yourselves, some of you, because we've been reacting to opposition and attacks for a long time, and it's hard to shut that off. And now I'm seeing a lot of people on the right, by that I mean like conservative media, podcasts, going deep into these, well, who's controlling Trump? And is this? You know what? Maybe someone is controlling Trump, but you should always focus on what comes out of the person in charge. Okay. Not why it came out, but if it helps you and it helps your family and you're doing better, then you should get more involved in the government to make sure that hypothetically, if someone is controlling someone else, and you can take those reins, because that's the beauty of America, is everyone has a chance to do that. But I was really moved by this speech on a personal level, because when I heard it, I was thinking of my friend Ora, who's going to join us in a second here, and her husband, who's a very, very good friend of mine. We met them out in the Pacific Palisades for an RFK event some time ago, and we just hit it off right away. And so I just love that the first text he sent me when the fires broke out is he hunkered down to protect the house. Okay, he hunkered down to protect the house, and he used his skills as a lawyer to kind of rally some support, that sort of thing, from firefighters, private fire companies. And, you know, this man is just, he's the energizer, and his equally great wife are just the power team. But what I loved was the first text he sent me when I said, "Hey man, are you okay?" He said, "No retreat, no surrender." And then just yesterday, out of the blue, I said, "Checking in, thought I'd give you a few days to focus. How are things and how are you?" He replies, "We are survivors and explorers." Okay. And I replied, "And warriors." And you are. And everyone that fights for what is theirs, what they believe in, what they've earned, what their dreams are, and preserving those dreams, they deserve the label of warrior, and they deserve the label of American and patriot and friend. Okay, so I'm inspired by Ora's husband and by Ora, and that's why I wanted to have her here. She's gone through hell. She's been out there in the fires. Their house was in ground zero for the most part. Luckily, it was saved, but she's here to talk a little bit about the fires, give us an update, and then I want to hear Ora's thoughts on, you know, today's speech. Now, before I bring her to the stage, let me show you her bio, so you know who I'm talking about. Now, Ora used to be a commentator on Daily Cloud, and this is her right here. So, expand my screen so I can read it. So, Ora is a mindfulness expert. She's the author of several books. You could see them down on the bottom. Her latest is Time to Awaken. I read that. It's fantastic. And I'm not going to read her bio verbatim. I'll let her talk more about herself. I know Ora too well. I called her in the headline Mindfulness Warrior and author. My impressions of Ora when I met her, yeah, at first I'm like, God, we're going to stay in these people's house. We don't even know them. Naomi and I were invited to stay at, you know, Ora's house. We've never met her. So I'm like, you know, I hope they like me. And we instantly started talking, and she was the combination of elegance and grit, where she was like, this needs to happen. I'm sick of this, and this is what we're going to do about it. At the same time, she's teaching mindfulness and just, you know, appreciates the most beautiful things in life. And we've all become friends ever since. So she can talk a little bit about mindfulness, because I think it's so important, especially when faced with opposition, to be mindful. It doesn't mean you have to love. I'm not one to believe in loving your enemy. I don't think that's possible sometimes. And I've been to combat many times, but I do think that you should try to be mindful of how we got here when you have time for that, and try to create an environment around you to only bring people to your bonfire that want to warm by it rather than run away from it or douse it out. Ora also, she once appeared on JJ Carroll on my show back in the day called Unrestricted Invasion, gave us some great insights. JJ, you know, this big, huge, you know, former Border Patrol guy, just loved her. He's like, wow, she is amazing, man. She's amazing. And I was like, yes, she is. She's great. So this is Ora. Definitely follow her on X and on Instagram. It's at Ora Nadrich, and you can find her there. I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm going to bring her to the stage right now, and I am so happy she made time for me to be here. So Ora, welcome.
Hi, Brian. It is so great to be here with you today. And you and Naomi have not only been your, true warriors in what you guys are doing, but such incredible friends to Jeff and I during one of the most challenging times in our lives. So thank you. And I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, and you're welcome, but no thanks necessary. You do the same for us, and you have. So we appreciate you as well. So Ora, we could think of the speech today.
I thought it was great. I cried. I was moved. I was hopeful watching him, listening to him. I was very aware of how he was, you know, I think we think of Donald Trump in a variety of ways. He can be silly, and he can use his favorite adjectives over and over again. But the man that we saw today, to me, was a changed man since the day his assassination almost happened and a miracle came forward and he did not get killed. So I really saw that. I saw someone today that is really going to change our country, not just make America great again, but to course correct us in a way that we haven't seen, not just the last 4 years, I think longer than that. I think that he is going to forge ahead a future for our country unlike anything we've seen before.
Yeah, I tell you, it just we drive. We were driving through New York, upstate New York, where we live, and you've been to our house. And I remember it was like October, September, just, me and Naomi were driving, and I'm like, man, just feels like a dark shadow over this whole country right now. And then we were just driving the other day, and the sun peeked out of a snowstorm. And I said, man, it feels like that weight has been lifted. We have a lot of work to do, but it feels great that we know. I think the hardest thing about fighting the way all of us have been fighting, this terrible regime, this authoritarian, dictatorial, whatever you want to call it, is that it felt like you're fighting alone, or it felt like, why does it matter? Like, if I keep fighting, there's a bunch of people that are just going to go along with whatever's easiest. And those people still exist. But I think for me, the election was such a landslide. I was so happy that day. I live streamed till like 6 a.m. I played Night Shift at the end of that one by the Commodores. I was so happy, but because it felt like, okay, all right, the cavalry, which is the American people, have arrived. And I just hope I think it's up to all of us to keep that momentum going. Like, we're now in war. Okay. Right. We're now in war. The only difference is, our General Washington put together a great executive team, and there's a much better plan now to fight those enemies from within and without, figuratively and literally. Now, there were some mentions of the fires, and some of the commentators, and I try not to watch, but it's my job to watch, on MSNBC, they're like, oh, he was kind of hard on, what he said about, there was not even a token response to fighting the fires in LA. That was unfair, blah, blah, blah. Well, you were there. What do you think? Was that unfair?
No, I think first of all, I'm so glad that he made mention of it. I was hoping that he would, and he did. And he knows all too well the ineptness and the gross negligence of our governor, Gavin Newsom. He was aware of that years ago when he presented the idea of how to really, prevent these fires, and Gavin Newsom wanted nothing to do with that. So he's fully aware of the ineptness and, again, the gross negligence of our governor, Gavin Newsom, our mayor, Karen Bass. And I'm glad that he mentioned it. People will probably jump to conclusion and rush to judgment and say, oh, he's protecting, the wealthy because they're the ones that were hit the hardest. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Let me set the record straight that where I live in Pacific Palisades, yes, there are parts of it, like a lot of parts of the city, that have affluent areas, but the Palisades is also a multi-generational, community, from going way back to grandparents and parents and their children that have raised their grandchildren, even great-great-grandchildren in this community that is eviscerated, that looks like a war zone. It is shocking to see what has happened to my beloved community. And then you go across town to Altadena, which has, a very poor demographic of people that also have had their community and their homes burned and eviscerated, and it's tragic. So I'm very happy that President Trump mentioned the fires and that there was just gross inadequacies and ineptness that I hope there's retribution for that.
And what kind of retribution are you talking about? Like criminal charges?
We could talk about criminal charges going back, 5 years ago with COVID. Now we see, at the penultimate moment, we see Biden not only pardoning Fauci and Cheney, and at the, if we can even fathom him pardoning his own family, it's truly disgusting. Okay, so criminal charges, I would settle for any kind of charges at this point, Brian. Any kind of accountability, any kind of like not letting them get away with their crimes against humanity.
I totally agree with you. And look, I mean, keep in mind that a presidential pardon does not protect you from civil liability as well as state criminal charges as well.
And Brian, I think we all know that when you pardon somebody, you're pardoning them because they've obviously done something wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got I don't, stop me if I'm wrong, but like, I got to pull up the comments in case someone stops me if I'm wrong. But yeah, you're right. In my opinion, I think in the long run, let's say no one can ever get these people to court. What is their life going to be like in America? I mean, that is pretty much putting a label on them of guilty.
Absolutely.
These pre-pardons, I've never even heard of that before.
Right. I mean, it's so obvious. You assume, as the former party did, that people are really stupid. Well, they're a lot smarter than they thought that we are, when the outcome of the election proved that to be true. The people are a lot smarter. They weren't having it. They were fed up with all of the insanity of it all. And to see the Biden administration go out and have these parties, in quick succession, I think spoke volumes of what the party was about.
Sorry, I got some audio coming through. Let me find out where that's coming from and get rid of it. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it's so the thing I wanted to talk to you about, because in my house, you talk to Naomi Wolf, my wife, a lot. You guys are good friends, and I'm not allowed to, butt in. We have a small house, but I'll be like, wait, don't forget. And she's like, no, I'm on the phone. And I'm like, then take it off speaker. But I did kind of overhear, your frustration with, a lot of people in the general community of almost like malaise, not even malaise, almost like they're just going to go with whatever, no matter how bad it hurts. And I know, I would never ask anyone how they voted, but I know that's a very blue area. I know your politics well, of course. But the thing is, has that changed at all? You'd said earlier on, before the election, and when we first met, the problem is these people are in a bubble, and it doesn't affect them. And well, now it has affected them. Has that caused any sort of change to the view of how they're looking at not only their government, but their involvement in it, their active involvement in policies that actually will protect their homes and families?
I do believe that this will wake a lot of people up, maybe perhaps not as quickly or as largely as I would like that to happen. I can't gauge, the amount of people in my city, which, we know that California is a blue state, and that there are a lot of people even close to me in my environment, in my neighborhood, if you will, that I know exactly what their voting was. And I want to keep in mind, speaking of mindfulness, that it's a fine line between feeling a lot of resentment towards the party that voted for Biden and were really quick to vote for Kamala. And, burned houses or not, I think some of those people would still do it all over again. So that's really, kind of shocking to think that what is it really going to take to wake you up? However, I am hearing stories, and I also think that there's a lot of pride in not admitting that you were wrong, which seems to be a sort of character flaw that I see with a lot of these people that were on the left and continued perhaps to still remain attached to that party, and they don't want to admit that maybe they were wrong, and they don't even want to admit that Trump could maybe be their guy. It's just hard for them to do so. So I do think in a short period of time, hopefully that more of them will, wake up and realize that maybe perhaps they made the wrong choice. And if having your house burned down and seeing the ineptness, as I mentioned, of the leaders of that you voted for, and now you're lamenting your losses, but you can't, you sort of do a disconnect and you don't take responsibility that you voted for the people that could not be there for us. I'm hoping, Brian, that more of them will recognize and acknowledge that today is a new day. Today is a day, it's a new beginning. Donald Trump is our president again, back better than ever before. And hopefully they'll be on board to see the positive changes that he wants to put forward for our country. If you love this country, your speech was so eloquent and so spot on. If you love this country, then believe in his words that he wants to make this country great again. Why would anybody want to oppose that? It makes no sense to me.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and I want to talk a little bit more about this, but also in the context of mindfulness. And maybe you can explain, not everyone knows what mindfulness is, but we're going to talk about that in a second. I just need to address our wonderful sponsors really quickly. So don't go anywhere. I will have you right back on the stage. So one of our sponsors that I have to mention because they're wonderful, and they got me a full night of sleep last night, is By Optimizers. Now, they have a product called Magnesium Breakthrough. You can see it scrolling along the bottom there. I never knew this, but most Americans are magnesium deficient. And those that do take magnesium are not always taking it the right way. I don't know the science behind Bioptimizers, but I do know this. Every time I take my Bioptimizers at night, I sleep. And as a disabled veteran, one of my ailments, if you will, is not only sleep apnea, but like insomnia. I'm constantly vigilant, like I'm getting up, checking windows. It's a bad PTSD thing, apparently. And this has really helped me. I take two of these every night before I go to sleep. I sleep like a baby. It's fantastic. And it just, it gets you where you want to be. This company, of all of them, we started with them as a sponsor some time ago, and then we had a pause on that while business decisions were being reevaluated. And I was so sad. I'm like, no. I'll promote Bioptimizers no matter what. And of course, they're our sponsor again, but you just can't go wrong. If you are having sleep issues, or if you're just tired all day long and you don't know why, you probably are having sleep issues. Check out Bioptimizers. You're going to go to bioptimizers.com/dailyclout and use Daily Clout as your checkout code, as your discount code when you check out. You're going to save 10%. What you're seeing on the screen there, you're seeing actual live buys of this during this show. It's amazing. And because I just tell everyone, I'm like, hey, you know what? Try it. If you don't like it, then contact them. I'm sure they'll take care of you, but try it. And even if you don't think you have sleep issues, everyone can always sleep better. Okay? We've got a lot of fighting to do. We need these brains intact. That's our best weapon. And you can't do that if you're not getting a good night of sleep. So again, go to bioptimizers.com/dailyclout. Use Daily Clout at checkout and get 10% off. And write in Brian at dailyclout.io. Let me know what you think. Let me know if it's helping you. And I want to hear your story about it. I love this stuff. And just as a note, yes, they're sponsors, but the only sponsors we have on Daily Clout, we actually use all their products. Okay. We don't have tactical bearskin hoodie yet, but I have my tactical bearskin hoodie there. So they're next, and I'm going to curl up with that with my Bioptimizers and get a nice cozy night of sleep. So check it out again. Daily Clout is your checkout code at bioptimizers.com/Daily Clout. Get your 10% off and let us know what you think. All right, back to the show. Okay, Ora. I sometimes put my guests through the gauntlet of seeing if they can spot when I'm slipping into an ad. It's kind of a fun joke that me and my friend Brandon have. Like, we were talking, I'm like, Brandon, those soldiers over there, they look pretty sleepy. He's like, yeah, and I'm like, maybe they need. So so Ora, can you tell me a little bit about your work? Tell the audience. And I think what my audience would love to hear is, what is mindfulness? Why is it important? And is it for everyone?
Well, first of all, I want to say that yes, mindfulness is not only for everyone, it's a quality that each and every one of us has, but we don't necessarily use. And so in the simplest way to explain what mindfulness is, it's being present. It means that you are present in the moment of which you are in. Now, we know how hard that is when we live lives of constant distraction, constant, assaults on our nervous system. We are on social media. We are in fight or flight. We certainly have been in that state for the last 5 years, as you know, Brian, that we have been on, high alert for the safety and the security and the sanity of our existence for the last 5 years since, the COVID insanity happened. So my work with mindfulness, which I've been doing for a very long time, I was a mindfulness meditation practitioner and a meditator for many, many years. I started off as a transcendental meditator, and with the recent passing of filmmaker Brian Lynch, who was a very important ambassador for transcendental meditation, it's a type of meditation that is helped me tremendously when I was an actress, which was a very stressful profession that I was in. And I'm a big advocate of quieting the mind when we need to, because God knows it's thinking between 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day. So we got a lot of activity going on in these brains of ours. So the mindfulness practice came to me at a time when as I said, I had been a meditator and a meditation teacher. And I was taught the mindfulness practice. I had a mindfulness mentor. I got very interested in the work of mindfulness. And it really is taking meditation off the yoga mat or the meditation pillow and really bringing it out into your life, being mindful and aware with yourself, with others, with your environment and the world. And being awake and being aware and being conscious and being present helps you realize that you are really aware of what's going on in the world. And my big aha moment, which happened during COVID, was when all of the mandates and the totalitarianism that started to rear its ugly head. As a mindfulness person, it came in really key for me because I was able to connect the dots probably easier than a lot of people that just were going along with the program. And a lot of those people thought that they were doing the right thing. When you're aware and you're awake, you're quick to notice when the dots don't connect. And I thank my mindfulness practice for really helping elucidate that for me and being able to really recognize that something very nefarious was happening in our country and in our world. And it was happening all at once, which was unprecedented. And like I said, it really took a lot of people over. And sadly, and I know all the incredible work that Naomi has done with the Pfizer documents and bringing that awareness to people so they can really understand the harm that was done and expose it for what it was, which was crimes against humanity, as we know. So being a mindful person basically makes you more awake. It makes you more aware and more awake. And who doesn't need more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a book, I don't know if you've read it, by Michael Nels, called The Indoctrinated Brain. Have you read this book?
I have not.
I'll definitely make sure you get a copy. So I didn't know that Naomi had written the foreword until I was listening to it on Audible. And they're like, foreword by Naomi Wolf. I'm like, oh, she's been busy. But it's really interesting what you're saying, because mindfulness, you're talking about how you're able to connect the dots. I'm not a brain guy, but from what he was saying in this book is that there's something called like the index neurons in the brain that kind of store your personal biography and your longer term memories. And that fear, confusion, overload of information will rewrite these or overwrite these index neurons, because it borrows from your long term memory and says, oh, we've got, danger. We need to overwrite these. And the fear of the last 4 years has become a lot of people's biography. It's become their history. It's why they get so angry and rage filled when you go against what is, to you and me, some ridiculous political play or profit play. To them, it's their reality, because they're having trouble indexing their own ethics and value structures. Am I on the right track with how mindfulness could help?
Absolutely, because I think that, to have a sense of normalcy, if you will, and to be able to trust your perceptions of reality, and that the way in which the constructs work and the way in which our lives work and the way we function in life is that there's a type of order to things. And when you present to people, especially when there is tremendous disorder, as there was during COVID, so the first emotion that's going to come up for people is fear. And, as far as this particular author's, the way he or she broke it down, I view it in the same way that I felt that if you threaten people's reality as they know it to be, or their biography, not just in the last 5 years, but that identity is the whole history of your life, really. It's the way you view yourself and in relation to the world, in relation to the work that you do, the beliefs that you have. And if that is threatened, it's very hard to not view that as something what they call conspiracy theories, because it short circuits your reality as you've known it to be. Do you know? And so I really started to have more compassion for people, thinking, how do you tell them things like, okay, you just put something in your body that could potentially kill you, and your government hates you, or, all the things that we came to know and try to reach the people that we loved. And they view that as, well, you must be crazy, because it's too threatening to their sense of not only self, but the very thing that you're talking about, the biography of self, the history of self.
Mm-hmm.
History of the way in which we live our lives individually and collectively. And it's just too much. It's too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that even if you spoon-fed them that, they still could not handle it. It still was too threatening. Because if you really break down so many of the constructs, and so many of the isms and so many of the ways of the things in which the way we live, in the medical milieu, in education, in government, even talking about our health organizations during COVID, and to come to find that our health organizations did not have our best interests at heart at all. It's just not logical for people, because then they have to question everything. And imagine people in these professional environments. You're threatening everything that they've believed in and have been told is true. That's why we saw so many people, whether they were well educated, some of them who had, had very esteemed positions in the area of medicine or politics or education. And they all, you would say, well, how could he or she believe that? How is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
How could they not know that that is a lie? Well, they're going to have to question the entire history of their biography, as you talk about.
Yeah, and they need to take that time a few times a day. I was impressed that, look, I mean, if I met Jeff without meeting you, I'd be like, this guy's a hard charger, and he's older than me, and I'm a little embarrassed because he has twice as much energy. But he tells me every day, he's like, got to get your 8 hours, got to get your meditation in, and I'm like, yeah, no, you're right, because I understand he meditates as well. But I've also heard it. There's another book I love reading about the brain and the mind, but there's another book called I think it's How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes, and they talk about how, all day long when you're taking in information, it's almost like a bunch of U-Haul trucks dumping boxes into your garage, dumping boxes, just constant. So every tweet you're reading, every news article you're reading, it's just a mass of boxes getting dumped into your brain of information. And mindfulness is that point where you close the door from any new deliveries and you kind of sort those boxes out, get rid of the ones you don't really need and get things organized. And then that way, when you go back into your brain or your garage, you can find the things you need. And you'd mentioned how it was easy for you to connect the dots. I would imagine your mindfulness kept your, cranial garage nice and organized.
I love the way you describe that. That's really great because having a mindfulness or the awareness, and think of mindfulness as an awareness discipline, and it's all mental discipline, if you will. And we really do need that because our minds run amok. And again, we're so inundated and blitzkrieg daily with information overload. And we know what happened over the last 4 years. We were blitzkrieged with information that was completely inverted. I mean, it was like the time of complete insanity, and to say that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. I mean, everything was just turned inside out, upside down. It was, I think we're going to look back at that time and go, okay, was this a test? Was this a mental endurance test to see who really could keep that mindful awareness when everything was crazy in front of us and being presented to us, to see if we could pass the test of sanity? So the mindfulness, again, circling back to that, it is a fantastic discipline. I wish the whole world practiced it. I think it should be taught in schools, starting as young as possible, to have people become aware of their own inner dialogue, their thoughts, their perceptions, to be able to discern what is real and what is not real, what is true, what is not true. And I think the more you refine that process, you're not easily fooled, and you begin to be a real conscious human being on this planet of ours. And we need that now more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we'll get to that in a second. Let me just mention another sponsor really quickly. But I don't know how much time you have, so if you have to go, you have to go. I always run over on these episodes when I have actually, last time you were on, we went for 2.5 hours, I think. So, but how much do you have? I
have some more time.
Okay, great.
Talking to you, Brian. It's always great. We cover a lot of territory.
Absolutely. So really quickly on that note, right now we are taking the Native Path and Native Hydrate Challenge here at Daily Clout. So what is Native Path or Native Hydrate? Well, it is literally one of my favorite things that I do every single day. Let me pull this up here. The joys of self-production. Here we go. So I started taking Native Path collagen because, my wife was talking about it on her show, and she was talking to the CEO. At the same time, and I've told this story to my regular listeners many times, at the same time, my son, was 11 at the time, he's starting to get that kind of smart-ass O'Shea gene going on. We're kind of just hanging out, and he looked at the top of my head, and he goes, "Dude, you're going bald." And I was like, So I started taking collagen because I saw the hair part and also the aches and stuff as I was getting older. Like I'm 50 now, and I started noticing right around 46, 47, I started getting aches for no reason at all. And, a lot of that had to do with not drinking enough water, maybe not getting enough exercise. But as it turns out, a lot of people are not getting a lot of collagen that they need, and it's good for your teeth, your bones, your hair, your nails. So I started taking this. Now, I can't scientifically prove that it was the collagen, but about 2 months later, I was in the checkout and they have those cameras, right? When you're doing the self checkout, and I looked and I could see the top of my scalp and it was looking nice, healthy, and full. And I was like, all right. Again, I'm not saying that was all about the collagen, but that was the only thing in my diet I had changed. And it does actually reduce a lot of the normal aches and pains you get just as you get older. So that is right now, Native Path. If you go to nativepath.com/daily clout, you're going to get a huge discount. There's also the other product they have is called Native Hydrate. That's the actual thing you see down there. Let me get to that. Native Hydrate is amazing. Let me see if I've got one here. No, I don't. But I've actually been repurposing whiskey bottles because they're glass, and that's what I mix my Native Hydrate in. And Native Hydrate, let me put it this way. When you take Native Hydrate, basically what's happening is it's full of amino acids. It first thing in the morning, it actually gives you an energy boost. I just suck down about 16 ounces of it every morning. It's delicious, and it is definitely one of my favorite things over at Native Path is the Native Hydrate. And we are doing the Native Hydrate Challenge, and that's been our thing every morning is Native Hydrate. And the good news is, look, you know it's good. I'll tell you why. Because you go, if you go to, I put it out for my son, okay? And he's like, what's this? Can I have Gatorade? I was like, no, you can't have Gatorade. You can have Native Hydrate. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Because he's, like any kid, he doesn't trust his parents. What do we know? But I can't, I think he actually stole my thing of Native Hydrate. Here's our whole product line here. Okay, so the Native Hydrate, this is all their products, the Collagen PM, but the Native Hydrate is really, really good. And it's really better than anything you could get. In a bottle, I guess they were talking about there's too many electrolytes in a lot of things. And what I love about the Native Hydrate is it just wakes you up. It gives you those amino acids you've been missing. And remember, when you wake up in the morning, you are dehydrated. And a lot of people go right to that coffee, which is a diuretic. I recommend getting the Native Hydrate if I can find it. But you can see it right there on the thing. But go to nativehydrate.com/daily clout. This is the same company, by the way. And check out the Native Hydrate products. My favorite is the peach mango. And it's just one scoop. You mix it up. And in my case, I shake it up in a repurposed whiskey bottle. And, and if you are a whiskey person, it's great for hangovers. Can't beat it. So, anyways, try it. nativehydrate.com/daily clout. Learn more. Get it. Tell me what you think, as always. And this is not actually on my list of things to mention to you, but I have to mention it because it's so good. There is this thing that they sent us that I was very excited about. It's the Collagen PM. Okay. And because I have sleep issues. So Collagen PM with my magnesium, it's the best sleep ever. It is. And by the way, collagen, you don't taste it. You can mix it up with water. You're not going to taste it. So check them all out. Use Daily Clout as your code. When you check out, you're going to love it. Let us know what you think, as always. Okay. Back to the show. And Ora can attest, she's seen all these things around our house.
I am so going to order that Collagen PM, the Bio Optimizer Magnesium. I just want to, no, I have no skin in the game. I want to give that a shout out. My mother, before she passed, that's what we gave her at night to sleep. And it
was
helped.
The magnesium?
Yes, was that particular magnesium.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which helped her because, as you get older, and she was, she passed at 98 years old, a phenomenal woman, but sleep becomes extremely difficult. And that was what we gave her.
It really helps me. I have major sleep issues.
Yeah, but the Collagen PM, I'm so going to get that.
Yeah, it's so good.
That would be a great combo.
I didn't even know what it was. They just had this pack, that came in the box. And I was like, oh, I'll try this out. And I did it. I was like, oh, this is like, I was excited to go to sleep. I'm like, is tonight the night? Can it get any better than Bioptimizers? The Bioptimizers and the collagen PM? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So one thing I want to stress to people about mindfulness, and look, this is, we're talking about the inauguration. There's a lot of bad things going on with that. Biden signed a bunch of executive orders, which are just insane, because they could just change them. It's people acting like babies, but you feel it like when we start talking about this, you start going down that rabbit hole of emotion, and now you're not thinking. It's like, okay, why do I care about this? And what I think in the book I was talking about, they call mindfulness or meditation, they call it diffusion exercises, and where you're giving your mind a break, and it could be something different. But what I want to tell people, some of my mindfulness practices, believe it or not, they're very easy. Walking the dog, art, and I might be wrong, Ora. So, but also Sherlock Holmes, what his mindfulness was? Smoking his pipe. So that's why he would say it's a 3-pipe case.
Well, Brian, I just want to interject really quickly. Mindfulness can be plugged into anything and everything that we do. That means mindful walking the dog, mindful eating, mindful discourse, mindful dancing, mindful. You plug it into anything and everything that we do. And if we plug it into everything and anything that we do, then we are more present in everything and anything that we're doing. Do you know?
And that means not worrying about, let's say dancing, like not worrying about, will they make fun of me tomorrow? How do I look? Thinking about like, I'm having a good time and this feels good.
Right. Totally. It's that. But, I want to, just because it's so present with us today, this Donald Trump becoming our 47th president, which is such a huge moment for us. And I want to acknowledge that. It's the day we've been just counting down to for a long time, as I see at the corner of my eye that he's signing more executive actions. And, the mindfulness work really will come in handy during this time. And I'm going to be very honest in the way that I myself have wanted to react, even watching the inauguration today, because, for example, a part of me doesn't even want to dumb it down and go there, but I will, watching Hillary Clinton shake her head. I'm just going to tell you how, when you watch some of the things that we watched as the left it was their last time that we might have to see them, it's very easy to go and get reactive and go, and get them to trigger us. It's so easy to be triggered. And mindfulness, not that we're all walking around like Zen Buddhas, but that it's very easy to get triggered. I mean, it was almost impossible not to get triggered over the last 4, and I want to add this year, because of so much of this insanity. And here we are on this glorious day of Donald Trump becoming the 47th president. And even watching the inauguration, there were moments where you could easily still get triggered. So what I want to encourage in the mindfulness practice is to take it higher. And that is yesterday's news, even though we have obstacles that we will encounter still, but that we don't want to allow ourselves to go into that petty, dumbing it down, reactive place. And we want to be able to focus on the positive and focus on being hopeful and focus on, why we're excited about Donald Trump being the president. And maybe, just maybe, that will affect those around us that see it differently. Even those that really find this day disdainful and repugnant because they cannot accept Donald Trump as our president, and they still want to hold the past. And by the way, speaking of mindfulness is being in the present. It's not living in the past and begrudging what once was or anticipating the future in a negative way. It's accepting the present time that we're in right now. How great would it be if people practiced mindfulness and said, even if they don't like the man, just stop staying in the past. Not that what he did with his last presidency was anything but my opinion, but positive. But, taking that and still begrudging him today, from the first day forward, they're still going to resent him. That is anything but mindful. Mindfulness is
Totally.
let's be present and let's see what he does. Let's give him a
Yeah.
chance. Do you know?
Well, I would say, in these dangerous times, because I think these are very dangerous times,
Yes.
more so than we've ever seen. So I find, so I spent 11 years in the active duty military, most of that time with special forces units. So we were always forward deployed. And mindfulness is the way, I didn't know it was mindfulness at the time, but it was the way we stayed mission focused.
Right.
And I remember just while you were talking, I was thinking about it. I was thinking, I used to jump out of airplanes, which is terrifying, and we used to have saying, if you're next to someone who's not terrified of jumping out of a perfect looking airplane, then get behind someone else. But they do this thing right when the door opens, and that's when the wind's coming in, and we were doing the static line stuff. And, it's a very hard thing to do, but then all of a sudden you have to repeat all these mantras. They're like, sound off for equipment check, and everyone yells that. And then they're like, you check the guy in front of you, and then you kind of slap his or her butt, and it goes, okay, and it goes up the line. And then they say 1 minute, and everyone repeats 1 minute. But what I found is like that forces you to be in the present moment. And it was at that time when we start doing the shouting back like that I wasn't scared anymore, because I was just so focused on this thing in front of me, this thing I have to do, that the fear went right out the window every time. And I had a lot of jumps, but it was, I look forward to that moment when you stand up and it's your turn to go with your line of people, and they start doing these cadences like sound off for equipment check, and you're repeating those. And it just forces you to think about nothing else but that command. Would that be a great example of mindfulness?
It is. And it's a great, mindfulness is a practice. It's a mental discipline. And I'm sure a lot of guys in the military, have used it, and it's been used, in all sorts of ways and in different, capacities. And I do think that comparing it even to the guys in the NBA or the, or the NFL, these guys have to be so present. The precision, the focus, the awareness has to be so precise and so 100% that you are vigilant about being present, and you're going into the arena, you're going into the game to win it. You can't let all this other stuff interfere, or you're going to lose your focus. It's mental discipline. I just think right now I'd love nothing more to see us really let that take the lead in how we approach this, because like I said, even I watched the inauguration today, and I found myself at times getting a little bit annoyed when I looked to that group, that infamous group that was exiting stage right and no longer going to be the administration that we have to listen to ever again. And I was having some visceral feelings about that. And I put it in a mindful perspective. I was like, okay, let's really focus on the positive. I have such belief and hope that this administration, all of its intentions are positive. I believe in everything that he said today. And, just to stay present with that is really important. And I hope, as I just said, maybe that's the best way to be with people, because we're still going to be with those people. I encountered somebody today, by the way. I'm at a hotel. I was talking to a couple that had lost their home, and we started the conversation, and I said, well, I was just watching the inauguration, and I saw this man's face change right in front of me. Just like his face fell, like, oh. And he said, well, I don't have much faith in that, and that rush to judgment, that not being mindful, not being present and accepting what is, and insisting that something should be other than what is, And I know I'm going to encounter a lot of that, Brian. I know even people that have lost their homes, they're still going to defend what was and not accept what is. And that is mindfulness 101.
That is a great example of it. I was thinking the same thing watching it today. Like, and maybe you can help explain this. I actually use some breathing exercises to stay mindful and to stay. And really quickly, I want people to understand that being mindful doesn't mean being soft on your enemies. Being mindful means being in the moment. So I think people think of things like mindfulness or meditation. They're thinking, oh, well, I don't plan on being a Buddhist or anything. And
Yeah.
a
No,
family member of ours said, there's this, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. I mean, I really like that point because people will say to me, "Oh, you're a mindfulness practitioner. You're a positive, author. You probably don't have negative thoughts or don't get angry." That's ridiculous. Mindfulness only helps you be able to talk to your enemy better, I think. You're
Mhm.
able to have civil discourse. You're able to talk to somebody who might have excuse me, Trump derangement syndrome and not let that fuel the conversation that it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah,
It,
absolutely.
do you know what I mean? It's like it really is. Just think of it as it's like a superpower. It really helps you be able to stay present with somebody that might have completely differing opinions than you, and you're butting horns and you can't get along and you want to like never see each other again. Maybe, just maybe, we can have a type of discourse where we can hear each other. Can we start with that and maybe really
Mhm.
be able to sit at the table by hearing our differences and not rejecting each other because we don't think along the same lines? We've had plenty of that. We lived 4 years of severe polarization.
Mhm.
Oh,
Totally agree with that. And it's, that's what you see boxers doing this all the time. They're actually practicing mindfulness because when they do those weigh-ins and they're glaring at each other, that whole thing is to get the other one's adrenaline triggered. Because once you get into rage and anger and fear, you can't really think, clearly.
yeah,
And boxing, if anyone who boxes can tell you, it's a chess game. It is not a brute force game. And it's interesting to watch them and they're staying focused. Or if you saw Saving Private Ryan, the sniper in that movie would always say a prayer. Well, what he was doing was he was gauging his breathing, and so he'd say the prayer to bring his breath down to the trough level. That's when you squeeze the trigger. But it was also keeping him focused and laser focused on what he needed to do.
yeah. And I want to also say, and I'm just saying this out loud for the first time because I'm thinking of what I was observing. Mindfulness also helps you become a really keen observer of what it is you're taking in that moment. And now, when I think about it, when I watched Trump, I was very taken by his demeanor. And what I realize now is that he was in a pretty strong state of equanimity because
Hmm.
he was able to, and which to me is an indication that he was very present. He was very clear about the words that were leaving his mouth. Again, people just assume that he's going to say something that's like off color or whatever. No, if anything, I would say when I said he seems different.
Hmm.
So, mindfulness is not something that I think someone would attach to Trump per se and say, oh, he's, a mindfulness person or he practices mindfulness. But I think he really was very present and more present than I've ever seen him before. And that in itself is a type of mindfulness. Do you know?
Yeah,
And
and
I,
he
I would think,
might have it naturally.
yeah, I would think with everything he's been through, especially, post the assassination attempt, that maybe he had a great awakening himself. But I feel that he's taking it all in. He really has that ability to take in everything that's going on around him. And that is
Hmm.
present moment awareness. That is the mindfulness practice. That is that you are so present that you can read the room and you can you really see the cues. And I see that present in him now more than ever before.
Yeah, I certainly do. I hate to bring it back to Jeff, but the way they operate and the way I've heard Trump operate is like he will stop and, what I've heard is that he will stop and talk to anyone on the staff, the gardener, whatever. And, how was your weekend? And one thing about, if you I'll just say it anyways. Hopefully you don't mind. But one thing I was impressed about with, of course, both of you, but when I went out with Jeff to get some supplies at Costco for a party at your house, I went to go get a cart, and I came back, and Jeff introduced me to 3 people that worked at Costco. He knew their whole biographies, and they really liked him. And he's like, so, Jerry here, he's been here for 15 years. He's not really happy with these benefits, but he's working to change that. And then Tom over here. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, it's an amazing quality.
It is. You're right. And we all have the ability to do that if we were more mindful and more present. And again, because I think of this as Trump's day,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking about just everything I watched when I was watching the inauguration of who he was thanking, who he took that moment to make eye contact with. Even when he started to throw his pens after he was finished signing the first round of the executive actions, I was like, wow, he's so there. He's so present. And try and take in that experience, try and take in that room, try and take in everything that was happening simultaneously. So I am saying this very extemporaneously. I did not even think about that when I was watching him, but that's a really good example of seeing somebody be so present. And I saw how tired he was. Like later on, it's a very, very long day for him. I started to see during the parade that they were having, he was really looking tired. Like I thought he was actually going to fall asleep. He closed his eyes a couple of times. I mean, this poor man is probably so exhausted for trying to hold up the ceiling of the country for, as long as he has. And yet he was still present with people. And it was really an extraordinary thing to watch. And I would venture to say if you went back and watched a repeat of this, you would see it that way.
Yeah, we saw him speak at Bedminster about 2022 as a private event that we got invited to, and he's he's so present that and I have a picture of this, but I happened to wear the exact same outfit he was wearing, and this is hosted by this Orthodox Jewish group, so I was dressed just like Trump, and I guess I must have really stood out. And I didn't think about it till he came out. And there's this great picture I have where, I was at one of the front tables, and he just goes, I'm like, oh.
I'm surprised he didn't point his finger, how he kind of points.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah.
So after that, our host was like, hey, do you want to go meet him? I'm like, I think I'll let other people go, and I've met him before, so I don't want that look again, and I think he was just being funny. But the point is to notice individuals in a big room like that is amazing. And look, I hope that the people that absolutely, for whatever their hate Donald Trump, are good warriors and they study his moves, because then they'll be studying mindfulness. And then you know what? They might have some clarity of thought.
Beautifully said, Brian, and I agree with you completely. I think that we're going to be really surprised by what we're going to see in the days ahead. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not. Are there going to be things that, might surprise us or upset us? Perhaps. But I do feel that something has now gone into effect that we have been waiting for. And I am feeling, people ask me, how do you feel? I said, I feel really hopeful today. And even after this devastation that I just experienced with the fires out here in Southern California, which has been really heartbreaking, as you and Naomi know so well, you've been so there for us. And it's really unimaginable what just happened. And to have this day come about, which we were hoping could happen sooner, as soon as it could happen, I do feel hopeful. I feel that we're ready for something. And may mindfulness be a part of this new day, what he called the golden, what did Trump call it? It's the golden...
The golden age.
The golden age, yes, And I would love nothing more, Brian, to see us become more present people And for us to be, I wrote my book, Time to Awaken, because I felt that it was time for us to really wake up. And we need that. We need to do that. And I really do feel hopeful that even with what you asked me before, people that are on the left still, and they're like being stubborn and they're crossing their arms and digging their heels in and like, no, I can't possibly entertain the thought of supporting Donald Trump. He's everything that I abhor and that I don't believe in. It's like, lighten up, try something new. You might like it. Do you know what I mean? Give the guy a chance.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Aren't you just sort of fed up at times when you hear the rhetoric, the same old ad nauseum narratives that these people have, that they just are so uptight and they can't surrender to the whole idea of, this is what we talked about earlier, the over-identification, that it becomes your identity. Like, I'm a Democrat no matter what. I can't like this man. I can't, believe in his politics. I can't call myself Republican. That is just so small-minded. It's interesting to me that even if you have a desire to maybe go over to the other side and, maybe they're onto something, maybe the right is onto something that could be helpful for everybody, give it a try. Be open-minded, be mindful. Be present, be aware, I would
be vigilant. Mindfulness
Yes.
helps with your vigilance as well.
Yeah.
Because we are seeing the conservative media get kind of infiltrated. And so I would say be so present that you are literally, like, anyone you're listening to, you're really thinking about what they're saying and you're anchoring that to what you know because you've been mindful, so you haven't rewritten your index neurons. Because that's happening. That's a subject I want to talk to you about for another day. But with this whole red note thing and TikTok,
I know. Oh my gosh, we could so go on that.
we should later on this week, because I don't want to keep you.
Because I would love to hear your thoughts about
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah, totally. And but it's a little bit of a cliffhanger because within 24 hours it went from like, oops, we're back.
But now no one trusts it. Now everyone's like, well, it feels different. It's I'm like, good Lord, man.
Right.
I guess I was horrified when I saw some like 3 prominent conservatives podcasters literally parroting the same headline. TikTok ban backfires, TikTok ban backfires. I don't want to say them out by name, but one I wasn't surprised at, but they're like, one is saying this is about free speech and this is our way of, fighting back against it. One compared it to the Tea Party. I'm like, yeah, but the difference is the Tea Party didn't go to another authoritarian regime to, make their point. And so, what I saw with a lot of these, and look, they could be, some of them could be paid off. I think one of them is, but what I saw was that same reaction of not being mindful where, okay, Biden signed this order, so we have to go in the opposite direction. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong that Biden signed it. I always try. That's why I always, say investigate everything. I mean it. Like, investigate everything. Like, think outside the box.
By the way, that's really mindful. Investigate everything is to investigate everything. You've got to be fully present, fully aware, and fully vigilant. So that title alone is so about mindfulness. Investigate everything. It's be present, or, to quote, what was it, Ram Dass, be here now. It's like, I love to investigate everything because guess what? In order to investigate everything, you have got to be damn present.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can tell, like, I love that feeling when I am in an investigation. Like, that's where I was with the Mangione report that I sent you, where, like, I'm like, no. And I was just laser focused for like 4 days on that. And I try to practice what I do every time I have a good case every single day, because you don't always have an interesting case. But I still have to apply that because, you and Jeff being my spirit animals, I want to be more like you. So,
listen, Brian, don't be you're doing a pretty great job. And, you're a lot more mindful and a lot more present. And I consider you a fellow mental warrior. I really do.
Well, likewise. So,
yeah.
Well, Aura, we're gonna call it on that one. Let's talk about Red Note soon. I might do a panel on that one too.
I
Um,
love it. Yes,
it's it's just like we got some mindfulness to spread here because
we sure do.
the enemies are not letting up. So
No,
uh,
no.
I'm going to give you the final word, and then I'm going to let you go, and then I'll do some final thoughts for my audience. But before you go, can you give us some final words of wisdom? How can people get started? Like, what's something they could do tomorrow, tonight, to get mindful, and whatever you want to say.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for having this conversation,
My pleasure.
on such an important day as this is. And, I guess what I want to say is start today. Just be more present. Tell your listeners, start today by being present, allow yourself to be present with non-judgment. Don't rush to judgment, even with this inauguration. And let's really be present with the possibilities of what could be. And he talked about that. He talked about the possibilities and that we are a country of possibilities. So show up, be present, and see what happens.
Those are great words. Oh, you know what? I forgot. Speaking of being mindful and empathetic, how's Manny, the great member of your family? How's Manny doing?
Well, Manny, was there too. Manny didn't leave. So what was the words that Jeff said to you? Don't surrender. Manny,
No retreat, no surrender.
no retreat, no surrender applies to Manny too, because it's my understanding that there were other tortoises who knew. There were other tortoises in my neighborhood that were moved. They relocated them, and good old Manny, he and Jeff, they held the fort down.
And so Manny's a giant tortoise, so everyone's clear on who Manny is, right?
Yeah, Manny is awesome, and Manny will go into a new year with us.
Good old Manny. So,
Yeah,
Aura, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on. And
thank
where do
you.
people find you?
They can find me oranadrich.com, and most of my handles are Ora Nadrich, and yeah, to be continued.
You got it. So, thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Brian. Look
All
forward
right.
to it.
Thanks. Take
Bye.
care. Bye. Well, that was Ora Nadrich, and she's great friend, and she started in the freedom movement. That's how our friendship started there. Me and Naomi's and Ora's and Jeff's. They did host us out there in the Pacific Palisades, and while hosting her book launch and event for RFK Jr. Great people. These are great people. The most giving people too. So I'm glad you guys got to meet her because whether you're in Ohio or North Carolina or California, we're all Americans, and at times we're all victims of corrupt regimes. And it's those people like Ora that put their courage to the sticking place and dig down deep and move forward methodically, smartly, and mindfully. That really sets the adults from the children. And so it's great to see her, and real pleasure to have her on here. It's been a while. So, all right. So I am going to take some comments now, really quickly, and just saying hi to everyone that showed up. Retha says, yes, thank you. Good to see you, Retha. Thanks for coming. Ernest, my cousin, says little cabin on the lake. Yes, I grew up in a little cabin on the lake. He's talking about my very poor, tiny little cabin that we grew up in. Nice thing about being kids, though, you don't know you're poor, until you see other kids and you're like, oh, why do they have that? But we had so much fun growing up. I don't even whine about it. We were out in the woods. We always had a football team because we had 9 kids. Yeah, I don't regret it for a second. I wouldn't change it for the world. But Ernie was there too, and that is my actual cousin. So, and he's always here, so I'm always glad to see him. And yes, Ernie, I owe you a book. I will get that in the mail. Appreciate hearing about what's going on as a result of the Cali fires. You're welcome, Doc, and welcome. And I would also point people over to dailyclout.io. My wife, Naomi Wolf, did a long interview with Ora just the other day. So they got into a lot more of the details about what it's like on the ground and everything for those that are not there. So, and they're doing well. So, all right. Anastasia, love Terry. Awesome. Also good to see you, Anastasia. Thank you. And then Buddha said, you have to be okay with what it is or you're going to suffer. Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good quote. There's a joke I heard too, Anastasia, that's I heard it from a mindful author, that a man was in the woods and, he sees this, I'm sorry, the Buddha is walking through the woods and he comes upon this monk, and this monk is all beat up and bleeding, broken bones. And, the Buddhist monk says, the Buddha says, well, what happened to you? And he's like, well, there was an elephant charging at me. And he goes, okay. And he said, so I turned the other cheek. And he goes, okay. And he said, and then the elephant trampled me. The Buddha said, well, yes, I did say to turn the other cheek, but I also said to get out of the way first. So that's one of my favorite ones, but it's very, very true. The point of that is, like we said earlier, being mindful does not mean being a pacifist. Being mindful is, I almost view it as more mechanical than anything else. It's like really just being in the present moment. You're going to learn a lot more. You're going to think through things a lot more. And it also forces me to ask that question of, so what? Like when I get really spun up on things, and we all go down that rabbit hole. If you see some of my tweets late at night, but sometimes I'll be writing this fiery, rage-filled tweet, and then I stop. And I have this practice now where I save it as a draft, kind of like texting when you're out and about. I save it as a draft, and it seems like a good thing to send it in the morning, then I'll send it. It usually doesn't, because I'm driven by emotions, exhaustion, that sort of thing. But what I do find is by getting rid of that and saying, okay, I have to do this, you get more done, and you become stronger in every respect. You could be working out, and if you're not focused, you're not going to have a good workout. And I do feel that this barrage of information, this barrage of social media, the way our phones are configured, really is attacking our ability to focus. Thereby it's therefore it's attacking our ability to be mindful, because being mindful is a powerful thing. It is a powerful thing. The greatest military leaders I've worked for, the greatest business leaders I've worked for, they were so mindful that they remembered everything, because you talk to them and they're listening, they're taking it in. They knew when to cut you off too, because they are so mindful of what they need to accomplish. So keep that in mind. If you're of the warrior mentality, you cannot be a good warrior, a powerful warrior, without being a mindful warrior. Otherwise, you're just a brute. Okay, so that's what I feel. Okay, Anastasia, again, thank you. American Dreamer, thank you for the inauguration coverage. Yeah, I saw you this morning, American Dreamer, doing that. And I do apologize. I had to leave that show, my wife's show, to go on Emerald Robinson's show. And then Emerald and my wife have a show later on that I was producing. So I did try to pop back in. We had some technical issues, but thanks for being there. And more of those, if you guys like those long kind of coverages, or you want to see more daily coverage of what's going on, we are working on that. We're a small company here, but we are working on that, and we have some great ideas for that. So, and we're always wanting to hear your ideas too, but I do appreciate you showing up for that, American Dreamer. There were a lot of you there, and I do appreciate it. So to wrap it up for the night, here's what is happening. So talking about mindfulness, talking about, we mentioned Red Note. If you guys don't know the Red Note controversy, let me break it down for you really quickly. There was a TikTok ban, which is not really a ban. It was TikTok themselves that wanted to take the app down. I think based on Donald Trump's comment, it may or may not be up. I haven't been following it today because I was mindfully focused on my work. But what ended up happening is all of a sudden there was this weird thing that was primarily on the right, like conservative new media type people, a lot of which I'm sure people I respect, saying, oh, I downloaded Red Note, ha ha ha. It's like, well, that is bonkers. Like, why would you do that? And to me, it just seems like a covert influence operation. Seth Holhouse, one of our contributors on Daily Clout, he's Man in America is the name of his show. Check out his episode on Red Note. It's very, very informative. If you go to dailyclout.io, you'll see all of our shows. He had some really good coverage of that as it relates to the Chinese Communist Party, because like me, Seth knows he spent his adult life studying that adversary, and right away I was like, this looks like an op. When I see the same headlines, I'm like, this is not, doesn't mean those people are in on it that were parroting this stuff. They might be unwitting assets, meaning they're being used or they're being told what to do by a boss. Who knows? But pay attention to those kind of patterns, okay? Because, and then also think about it from a non-type of warfare type of thinking. Think of it from a business perspective. If you look at the ownership of Red Note, and by the way, Red Note is like the TikTok version. It's like a TikTok. It's big in China. It got really big here in the last few weeks. They say that the name of it translates to Red Note. What it really translates to is Little Red Book. You could pop in the name in Google Translate. There it is, Little Red Book. That was Mao's notes, Mao's kind of like journal diary of, Maoist thought, and probably the most destructive and deadly piece of literature ever written. Well, these people are flocking to something called Little Red Book. Here's the good news. I talked to some real people, not online, not that you're not real people, but, I was in the city talking to some young folks, in the 20s, kind of like the Gen Zers and stuff. And I asked them, I said, what do you think about Red Note? And all the ones I talked to, and these are like the hipsters, the cool kids, and they're like, we think it's weird. So that's the good news. So I think it's going to fall. I don't think it's going to like replace TikTok. But again, people are addicted to TikTok. So if the algorithm is the same on Red Note, there's an actual physical addiction to TikTok. And you could see that in a lot of the outbursts on the right and the left. So keep an eye on that story. We're going to dive into it deeper. We're going to have Brandon Weichart on this week, hopefully, and a couple other China experts. But yeah, keep an eye on that one, because from a business perspective, it kind of reminds me of like premium brand and value brand. And what that is like, for instance, Black & Decker, DeWalt, same company. Okay. And so, but one, Black & Decker appeals more to like, a mom doing fix-it-up stuff, or a do-it-yourselfer couple on the weekend who are not really construction people. And then DeWalt is, again, the same company, but it's the brand that targets like heavy-duty construction workers. And they call that value brands and premium brands. What I see with this Red Note thing is, what a great business play if this is what's happening, where TikTok knows this kind of like band and, all this scrutiny of their app was happening. So they started filtering Red Note into the social media space. And it's an instant, like they won't lose any users, but people don't realize they're probably getting on the same company's app. They're just getting overtly propagandized. And the only reason people do that is because they're physically addicted. We'll go into it deeper, but one more note I'll say on it. I would definitely read some of you could even find these on peer-reviewed medical journals, but look up something called the TikTok tick. Okay. It's almost like a Tourette syndrome that develops, reportedly. And when I hear the comments, and anyone who's ever been around like addicts or, had addicts in their family, I have, and to me, when I hear the people ranting and pissed off about TikTok, smart people, I looked at Naomi, I said, they sound like addicts, because they are. And, fentanyl goes away, give them mentanol, and that's kind of how I see this. So it's a brilliant business play, but you got to ask yourself one more question too. How's it even allowed to be downloaded in our country? I mean, the people going to Red Note, they must know that like the majority of Chinese people will never see their posts. And the ones I can see on Red Note are literally the same faces that I see trying to friend me on X, it's like a lot of them are AI looking people. They're not real. And so I would just caution people on that. You might think you're giving a big FU to the people that you say are affecting free speech, but don't forget, propaganda is a weapon. Okay, this is not about taking away anyone's free speech. Propaganda is a weapon. TikTok's been a weapon against this country. Red Note's a weapon. And yes, our own government does it. I get it. But what I am saying is, at least you have a little recourse, okay, here. Doesn't make it right, but what I am saying is, do not give your brains and your time, your valuable time, and your mindfulness over to our foreign adversaries' number one weapon. And make no mistake about it, the number one focus of the Chinese Communist Party is cognitive warfare. So I'll leave you on that note. It's too many subjects to traverse through tonight. But I do want to say, if you missed it, I want you guys to really get over to dailyclout.io. Check out my latest episode on Birch Gold. Birch Gold is a sponsor. You can see it right there. But it was a really interesting conversation that I had with Philip Patrick, the precious metals specialist over there at Birch Gold, because he was talking about the basically the bond yields kind of going nuts, moving in weird patterns. And this got into a whole conversation about Ghana, the amount of gold Ghana has, with the Chinese Communist Party in the U.S. is trying to get in bed with Ghana. Yes, Ghana, the place that Mayor Bass went to. The way Brazil has created a technology supposedly that can like repatriate gold by identifying it. Of course, under their new government, they're in bed with China. The point is this, and we had a great conversation. The powers that be, the powers that can really affect the existence of this world, that is the superpowers, the US, China, Brazil, are hoarding gold. Okay? You want to invest in something that others desire. Otherwise, it's valueless. Okay? You want that. And so what I recommend to people all the time, and I've done this, is go over to Birch Gold and you're going to go ahead and you're going to text Daily Clout to 989898. You are going to get a free info kit. And let me tell you about Birch Gold. What I love about this company is you get a free education in, macroeconomics history. It's amazing. And what I love about having them as a sponsor is I get to talk to them every day, but guess what? You can too. Like, I will literally pick up the phone before even doing a show. And if it goes into the area of gold, I'll call someone at Birch Gold and I'll say, hey man, can you tell me about this? Yes, I'm already a client. They don't care if you are or not. These guys and girls love what they do. It's a fascinating subject and it's incredible. I would even recommend signing up for their free newsletter because they have like the top 10 headlines. And if you're looking at geopolitical events of the world without figuring in, macro and microeconomics, especially in precious metals, then you're only getting half the picture. But also, as an investment, don't forget that gold at November 2023 was at about 1,700 an ounce. Now they're saying it's going to burst through 3,000 an ounce. That's in 1 year. That's like 33% growth rate. It's insane. So as an investment, it's fantastic. That's why Naomi and I trust Birch Gold to really handle so much of our retirements. But you don't have to move it all into gold either. And I asked Patrick that on this last interview. I said, well, what about those people that, worried about not being diversified? He said, well, we actually encourage that. You can actually do partial moves. They'll take care of you. They'll show you how to do it. They're very upfront with everything. So go ahead and text 989898, send the word Daily Clout, one word, to 989898. Get your free info kit and add that to your list of morning reads for sure, especially if you get the newsletter, because you're going to have a lot of aha moments. And it's better to have those aha moments when your retirement's protected than when it's not. So you don't want to have the aha moment after your retirement's gone, like mine almost was when I saw what the hell Janus and these other companies were investing my money in. So again, text Daily Clout to 989898. get your info kit. You won't be sorry. And I want to hear what you discover. A lot of you have written in and said, oh my God, did you know this? Did you know this about gold? Why are the Brazilians doing this? It's really a fascinating thing. So one more time, Birch Gold, you're going to text Daily Cloud to 989898 and get your free info kit today. And you'll be glad you did. And before the end of this, also please go over to, if you see on the bottom there, go over to Rumble and follow this show on Rumble. You can find it on rumble.com. You got it. Investigate Everything on Daily Cloud. But just go over to Rumble and type in Investigate Everything. And follow this show and share it, because a lot of people don't even know Rumble exists. And this is our time to really get people other perspectives. I'm not always right. I like to think I am. I do present things that I've researched thoroughly. But get it out there and get in the conversation. And I appreciate all you guys and girls that do. So, all right. Well, before I ramble on too much longer, and before I forget, of course, the Wellness Company is probably our longest standing sponsor. They are friends. They are incredible doctors. You got Peter McCullough over there, Dr. Drew, so many of the Harvey Risch. And we use their medical kits all the time. It's amazing because I told this story last time, but we're constantly like, oh my gosh, I got this bug or I got a tick bite or other things. And I'm like, well, let me check the Wellness Company kit. And sure enough, it's all pre-prescribed right there. And man, it really, really saves you a lot of hassle, especially if you're out in the woods like we are currently. So go to dailyclouthealth.com, and they were kind enough to set this up for us. Here we go. But go to, dailyclout.com /health, and it will take you here. This is the kit I'm talking about. This kit is one you have to have. They also have other kits. They have the contagion kit. They've got the medical kit, travel emergency kit, first aid emergency kit. I always have this. I keep this in every car. Okay. And we have one of these in every house as well. I don't have this one, but I feel like I should. This one I really want to get, especially if they keep messing with our food and our water. So these are great kits to have, and they have really great guides too that will walk you through just how to take everything. It saves you a lot of hassle because, I mean, come on, we've all done like the online health, like, during the pandemic, and you're like, oh my God, I got an infected arm, and they're like, okay. Then you got to talk to them for like an hour, and then you got to go to CVS and they give you like one pill, and then you got to do it all again the next day. It's just nice to have this stuff on hand. And it's a great company. They have great customer support, and they will answer every question. As a matter of fact, when we were talking to the Wellness Company initially, JJ Carroll and I, my former host, he actually got like a face surgery, like for something to get removed from inside his face or something. But he looked like he'd gone through hell. And without even asking, the Wellness Company actually had one of their doctors call and check on him, make sure he was getting the proper care and taking care of it the right way. So it's a company that cares. We're really happy with them. And I can't say enough good things about the Wellness Company. So get your kit today and tell us what you think for sure. Okay, well, with that, I am going to call it a night. It's so good to see you guys. It's been busy. It's been crazy with the fires, but more shows coming your way, more investigations coming your way. I did promise a Mangione update. So his Mangione, the guy accused of shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, as you all have probably seen, his indictment hearings have been delayed. Now, it's not sure if his defense team delayed them or Alvin Bragg's prosecution team delayed them. I'm guessing it was the prosecution. I think the defense probably agreed to it because, hey, why not have more time to work on your case? It does tell me something. If it was the prosecution that delayed that case, that tells me they don't have these mountains of evidence and the confidence they were bragging about. Now, I want them to get the right guy. I don't know who the right guy is. I don't know who the guy who shot Brian Thompson is. Based on my investigation, I've got more than reasonable doubt that they've got that, Mangione is I just don't think he's the guy from what I've seen so far. Now, there's a lot I haven't seen. There's a lot we won't see. There's hundreds of affidavits we'll never get to see. There's footage we won't get to see. But based on the way they're handling this case, I do believe that someone rushed on this one. It's pretty sloppy. And on that note, this Saturday, I am going to have a former defense lawyer on, and she is actually in the freedom movement as well. Her name is Janine Eunice, and a lot of you might know her. But she will be joining me, and she's going to be walking us through how she would take care of this case if she was the defense team. It's going to be a really, really interesting episode. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm glad she agreed to come on. And so that'll be Saturday. I'll announce the time. I believe that's going to be at 4:00 though. As long as she agrees that we can go live. So if we can't go live, I will get it out right away after I do any necessary edits. And the reason for that is sometimes, people, some people are just more comfortable with recording or going live, but we'll see. But that'll be a really interesting conversation. And you'll get to see the way, investigators work with defense lawyers and how our different minds think to either work together on a solution or kind of come together on a strategy. So it'll be really cool. I'm looking forward to that a lot. So that'll be Saturday. And then this week we will be covering the red note thing, even if it goes away. We also need to cover these executive orders that Biden signed. And we have not forgotten about the California fires. There is some stuff going on with that we will talk about. And I look forward to your comments and all your evidence. You guys have been sending in some great leads. Keep them coming. I really appreciate it. So with that, just remember, be mindful. By being mindful, I mean be focused, be in the moment, and every single thing you do makes life a lot easier, a lot better. And, with that, I will say keep investigating everything and have a great night. We will see you probably tomorrow. All right. Bye-bye.